In the UK, the real-time gross settlement service is the infrastructure that holds accounts for banks, building societies and other institutions. It has been a great success since its launch 20 years ago.
But now a renewal programme for the service has been announced, and here to tell us about the programme and its goals, we're joined by Victoria Cleland. She's the Executive Director for Banking, Payments and Financial Resilience at the Bank of England. Welcome to Sibos TV, Victoria. Now look, the RTGS, it's been a huge success over the last 20 years. So what is driving the current need for renewal?
I think one of the key things that's driving it is actually trying to increase resilience. So the system was introduced in 1996. We've been learning lots at Sibos even just today in terms of how much technology has changed. Think what your phone was like in 1996. So we want to renew the system. Resilience is really key, but also we're looking at changes of technology and seeing how we can build on those for innovation to actually make it a much more sort of system for the future. So we don't just want to renew it as is, we're going to add a few bells and whistles, as one would say.
And Victoria, what is the role of the Bank of England in the renewal programme?
So the Bank of England actually owns and operates the system on behalf of the market. So we're driving forward the programme. So we decided we actually needed to renew it. But we've been working incredibly closely with the industry to understand what they want, and also with Pay.UK to sort of make sure that we're doing something that is fit for the whole of UK payment infrastructure, not going it alone just for the high value side.
And what's the vision for RTGS that you want that renewal programme to deliver? What's the goal here?
So absolutely the heart of it is resilience for the system, both in terms of operational resilience. We have incredibly high targets, 99.5% sort of operational ability, also strengthening it against cyber attacks. So that resilience side is at the heart of what we're doing. But at the same time, we're trying to think, how can we increase the end-to-end risk management? So recently we brought CHAPS, which is the high value payment system for the UK, that came into the Bank of England. So we're trying to use the bank's own expertise, skills, cyber and things to look at that end-to-end process, right from our real-time gross settlement system through to the direct participants' own things. We're also looking at what more can we give to the direct participants, the users of the system, in terms of increased functionality, greater use of big data, greater liquidity saving mechanisms, interoperability, something again we've heard a lot about at Sibos so far, but really trying to think, can we have a better way of moving from our system to some of the retail systems if one of them gets into difficulty. And an absolutely key part of the renewal is actually to open up access to even more players. So earlier this year, the Bank of England introduced 2 non-bank payment service providers for the first time. We want to expand that, so making the system much more open and accessible to really increase innovation within the payment system, increase competition.
And Victoria, what do you perceive could be the biggest challenges in the transformation?
I think one of the really big decisions is sort of what technology do we want, and as a central bank we're really sort of treading the fine line. We want to be leading edge, we don't want to be bleeding edge, but quite where do we get on that? Also, I think it's really making sure that we understand what the changes to the system will have to our own operating model going forward. What does that mean for our staff? And crucially, I think bringing the industry along with us and making sure that they're actually ready for the change themselves. There's no point us being open for business with a new system if the industry aren't all there waiting at the same time. So a lot of coordination.
Now, previously, the Bank of England said that it wouldn't use distributed ledger technologies to deliver its RTGS system, but recently there was a proof of concept that was undertaken. So can you explain the thinking in this area?
Absolutely. So we did look at distributed ledger technology and decided that for something as big and important as our system, so there are about £600 billion of settlement per day goes through RTGS, which is about a third of the UK's GDP. So looking at DLT at the time, we just don't feel it's proven enough. We're not sure about the scalability. But what we do want to make sure is that when there are sort of participants or systems who want to sort of plug into RTGS, that they can do so using DLT. So the proofs of concepts that we ran over the summer were really trying to say, if somebody wants to connect to us from a DLT system, can that work? And the really good news was that it can, and we've put the results up on our website for people to read.
Victoria, you mentioned earlier that resilience is obviously at the centre of the design of the RTGS system. How are you ensuring this is the case?
So I think it's something that the team are very keen to make sure we consider at sort of every step of the journey. Also, we're working very closely with the National Cyber Security Centre, so really to get the latest intelligence from them to think about what we're doing. And that's not just in terms of building the system, it's also when we're thinking about procuring the system, being very careful how much information we would be sharing with sort of potential suppliers and things. And again, trying to think of that sort of end-to-end process, and not just what you put into our system, but how would the direct participants connect, what would their sort of resilience be?
And can you tell us how the Bank of England is working with the financial industry, banks and regulators, of course, on the RTGS renewal programme? What's happening?
So I think it's really important that we build a system that is what the industry wants and needs. Ultimately, the model is that it's industry who'll be paying for it. So at the very start, we had a number of bilateral meetings, but also consultations within the UK sort of financial services sector to say, what do you want? What are the changes you'd like? And based on that response, we came up with a blueprint that we published in May 2017. Since then, we've been really keeping up that engagement. So we have a number of industry fora every few months. So I chaired one a couple of weeks ago, about 150 participants there. We have an external advisory body where we're having a much more in-depth discussion to get their views. And again, so making sure it's something they want, but also making sure that they're going to be ready for it. Working very closely also with Payment.uk. It was renamed earlier, within about 5 days, which is why I hesitate over the name. It was new payments operator. Now it's Pay.uk. And so working with them to understand how what we're doing, the real-time gross settlement system, will fit into their plans in terms of the core retail systems with the new payment architecture. So I think sort of understanding and collaborating in the UK is key, but also the lessons we can learn from our sort of central bank counterparts around the world. So it's been great here sort of sharing ideas with a few people as well.
What benefit will international standards such as ISO 20022 bring to the programme?
I think it's really helpful in terms of increasing much more standardisation of messaging. One of the big themes has been in terms of you're going to move to sort of more cross-border payments. If you've got the same messaging standards, collecting the same type of information, that can help. It can also help with interoperability. So if there was a problem with one of the systems in the UK, if we're using the same messaging standards, that should in theory help to sort of switch them from one system to another. Also really important in terms of the information that you can collect, which can be helpful for sort of AML, understanding your customer and things. So lots of benefits from it, which is one of the reasons, I guess, why it's so many sessions on sort of LEIs, ISO and things here today.
And on the subject of sessions, Monday's session, Re-engineering International Payments for a Fast Digital Age, the speakers argued that international payments need to be more open, compliant and secure. So in your opinion, how can that be achieved?
So I think those are all sort of really great goals. I think the one thing I'd add to that is actually being more efficient as well. So I think one of the issues that we're finding, particularly in sort of cross-border payment, is there are so many frictions in that, and that is adding to the cost. So I wish I knew the absolute answer to that. I think it's something that everybody is trying to solve. The Bank of England's doing some work jointly at the moment with the Monetary Authority of Singapore and the Bank of Canada to see what we can are the sort of issues around cross-border payment that could be perhaps addressed by sort of distributed ledger technology or something. So I think we're doing some research into that, but I can't give you the answer this time. Maybe next time.
Are there any aspects of your experience on the renewal program that you'd like to share with other central banks?
I mean, we're still at a sort of fairly early stage in it, so I'm sure there'll be many more lessons to learn over the years. I think one of the key ones, though, is really don't forget the good things that you've already got. And so it's sort of, as we say in the UK, don't throw away the baby with the bathwater. There's a lot of really good stuff in our current system. So it's remembering that, which is important so you can build on it. But it's also really important when sort of inspiring the team. So they're still running the current system, which is doing a fantastic job. So you don't want to say, oh, the new one is shiny and fantastic. I think don't underestimate the amount of time it can take to sort of get the programme team up to strength. There's so much going on in the payment world, changing technology, resources there are sort of quite difficult to come by. And I think, to my mind, the most important thing is really bringing industry along with you, so consulting with them, understanding what they want and sort of helping them along the journey rather than giving them a big surprise at the end.
OK, so some sound advice there. Victoria Cleland, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks.